welcome to yet another Auti Thoughty on this, the 16th of September 2020. Today's topic is the subject of autism in fiction, and I do have quite a big bugbear with a lot of deliberately autistic characters. Like Sagan and Wren in The Bridge and, Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory, etc. And that is that writers tend to really home in on the sort of social awkwardness trait. And it does become quite a sort of comedic device. They always say the wrong thing at the wrong time, the most incredibly insensitive and crass thing they could possibly come out with. And that is one of the things that, especially in adults, is probably the least noticeable for most people, because we do learn as we grow up there are things you do not say. There are ways to have a quiet life, when someone says, "How are you?" you say, "Fine, thanks, how are you?" etc. We do sort of manage to muddle our way through conversations pretty well generally, and if we don't, then we tend to not really manage to muddle through life particularly well. We struggle with things like job interviews and getting through schools, passing exams, if we cannot answer questions correctly most of the time. So I have collected some well-known fictitious characters who I consider to be probably better examples of autisticism than ones who were deliberately created to depict that. I've gone for a range, across the autistic spectrum, a range of presentations. They are all from the second half of the 20th century and are English speaking. I'm afraid that is my culture. Those are the people I am aware of. But yeah, I've tried to go for a range of ages, demographics, as much as I possibly can. The first is Granny Weatherwax from the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. This, I think she sort of really depicts the kind of stereotype, if you like, of the sort of very, not quite stern, very precise, almost spooky sort of autistic presentation. She's always, very focused, very clear. She doesn't really engage in chit-chat. She's very dedicated to her duty. I mean, the Discworld in general, I think, is quite highly populated with people who are sort of very focused on one particular area of study and kind of really struggle outside of that. Ponder Stibbons, Leonard of Quirm, Death, etc. But I think Granny Weatherwax is, in particular, someone who goes a bit beyond that. It's not just that she has an interest, a skill. I mean, she has absolutely dedicated her life to being a witch. And a type of witchiness that is, in a way, autistic. I think, her kind of empathy, I think, is, the sort of autistic show of empathy. You know, not particularly being demonstrative in, you know, giving out physical affection or anything, but you know, a belief in sort of equality of all, of human rights. That sort of generalised understanding of, you know, the real value of human life. And it is something that she talks about repeatedly in the books. And there's one famous scene where she says that you know, the root of all evil is looking at people as things, as objects, and that is, you know, how everything else begins. I think that is, you know, the you know, autistic dedication to justice, I think, is displayed quite well there. And of course, she is, you know, quite a solitary soul. You know, she can associate with other people when necessary, but you know, she lives by herself. She once had a kind of romantic liaison with Mustrum Ridcully, pairing of WTF, but wasn't particularly bothered. It didn't work out. She went back to living by herself, and you know, expresses that she is absolutely happy with her life. She does have friends that she sees, that she works with. I think Nanny Og is probably her safe person, who is, you know, quite accepting, who is, you know, shares her interest in witchcraft. But and as a comparison, you know, she is extremely sociable and outgoing, has a large family, and you know, is actually much more popular with the locals. Granny with the Wax is, I mean, she is respected, but to a large extent she's kind of, you know, shunned almost. She's a bit too intense for most people. And that is, you know, quite an you know, a big part of the autistic condition, I think. There is, of course, the episode where she has to travel. She does not enjoy travelling. She does not enjoy unfamiliar food, unfamiliar territory. Of course, she does her job when she gets to a destination. She spends a holiday. She does not enjoy her holiday. She just wants to get home, really. Yeah, she's someone who's very much you know, rooted in her locality. She's come across as being sort of a little bit racist, maybe, in the Witches Abroad book. Maybe that is a subject for another film. But yeah, she's not comfortable with the unfamiliar. And I will leave it there. Next one, Taz the Tasmanian Devil. There's a family. You know, there's a family depicted. You know, the mum, dad, 3 kids, and they're sort of very much the archetypal sort of early 90s family. You know, sort of chilled out dad and the fussy mum and the sister who's sort of interested in, you know, fashion, pop music, and just nattering to her friends on the phone, etc. And the little baby who's sort of a cute little child. And there's Taz, who is non-verbal. He occasionally comes out with one word if he really needs to, but the overwhelming majority of the time non-verbal. Has frequent destructive meltdowns, and things don't go particularly well. He does become, sort of intensely focused on the task in hand. He develops strong interests, in inanimate objects mostly. He generally prefers inanimate objects to people. And he really loves music. Music just sends him into a trance, sometimes to sleep. And I think it's there's a few things quite problematic about it when you begin to see him as an autistic character, and the way that his strong reactions to things are sort of used for humour. He's being laughed at quite a lot of the time. But I do think it's quite sweet that his family just sort of treat him as if he's completely normal. They're very used to him. They just deal with him as he is. I think it's sort of quite funny as well that his sister, she quite often tries to bully him a bit and trick him into things because he's very trusting. He doesn't see hidden agendas, of course, as many autistic people do not. And his sister, sort of plays on that quite often, but she always gets a comeuppance in the end. There's one episode that sticks in my mind that she wants to go to a concert and Taz has the tickets. She starts playing with a bat and ball and sort of says, "Oh, do you want to have a go at this?" So while he's fascinated with the little bat and ball, on an elastic, she takes the tickets from his hand because he's absolutely entranced by it. But then he gets annoyed with the bat and ball, and he's playing with it, and it gets all tangled up around the room, and it sort of wraps around her, and she gets bashed against all the rocks and things, and yes, he ends up getting the tickets back. That kind of thing. Where was I? Taz the Tasmanian Devil. Yeah, I think he's sort of an interesting depiction of someone at the sort of really high needs end of the autistic spectrum, if such a thing exists, which is debatable. Maybe another topic for another film. Yes, and I'll leave that there. Number 3, Dougal Maguire from Father Ted. I think it's supposed to be sort of very much the comic relief character, but I personally find him sort of very relatable, as someone whose thought process is often sort of a bit out of step with the people around me. I don't really notice things until sort of several hours afterwards. Like the episode where he gets a milk round. All the women are coming to the door naked, thinking it is Pat Mustard, because they're a bit short of eye candy on Craggy Island, presumably. But it's only when he's in bed that night that he realises they were all naked. And again, he's got the safe person, he's got Ted. He lurks behind Ted most of the time. Lets Ted do the talking, occasionally butts in if he has an idea, and he has some very interesting ideas. He's not an idiot. He's got a lot of thought processes going on. I mean, not the thought processes that would be most appropriate in that situation, but he's got a lot of thought processes, and doesn't necessarily take in words particularly well. one where Ted announces they're having some nuns coming to visit, and he says, well, what's wrong with nuns? They just fumigate the place and then they leave. And Ted says, nuns. He goes, oh, right, nuns. I think that the interesting thing about Father Dougal as well is he has special interests. He regularly develops a special interest for the duration of an episode. There's one where he's very into matadors. For Christmas, he just requests lots and lots of matador stuff. And he gets a rabbit. He's very into rabbits at one point. There's one bit where he takes up rollerblading and gets completely obsessed with rollerblading. And as well, odd phobias. You do see sort of has phobias of things, and interesting sensory experiences, I think, quite a lot of the time. It's the famous episode with the cows. These cows are small, but those are far away. He's kind of really getting into that, isn't he? The idea of perspective. So, real sensory moment there. And I think there's it's interesting as well. It kind of lurks behind Ted whenever they're out of the house. I think the sort of physicality of the character, played by Ardal O'Hanlon so brilliantly. The way he sort of lurks around, sort of a little bit like he's aware that he's going to do something wrong. He's very used to doing things wrong. He knows that what he's about to say is maybe not quite appropriate, but he's going to say it anyway. And then there's the episode where there's a priest visiting, and he's talking to him about the things he has trouble with, with his faith. All those people who ate fish on a Friday, it's not a sin anymore. Are they all in hell now because they ate fish on a Friday, even though it's not a sin anymore, etc. And converts the visiting priest to hippiedom. I love that episode. He's clearly questioning things. He's got himself into a career where he's provided for and doesn't really have to think most of the time. He just sort of eats the meals that Mrs. Doyle serves, does as Ted tells him, and keeps his head down as much as possible. Lives in his little house, gets things done for him a lot of the time, and doesn't really have a lot of stress. I think as an autistic person myself, I find, and there's something sort of strange, not necessarily strangely appealing about being a priest, but about having that kind of lifestyle where everything just gets dealt with by someone else, and you sort of get on with your rollerblading. Number 4. I've left this one till last because I think he is the most accurate and sensitively portrayed autistic character I have ever experienced anywhere. And it's maybe a bit of a mind blower. It certainly blew my mind when it occurred to me. It's Windy Miller. Hello, Windy. Yes, I own a figurine of Windy Miller. It was actually made for me by a very talented friend of mine who really knows what she's doing with Fimo clay, as you can see. For my birthday 1 year. I love Camberwick green. Gotta love Camberwick green. And when you realise that he's one of us, you know, that the whole series really becomes a kind of masterclass in how to deal with your autistic friend for neurotypicals. I mean, his introduction, his first introduction in the first episode is he's rather old-fashioned and likes to grind his own corn. Now, straight away, someone who is change-averse, you know, who's a bit eccentric, does things by himself, you know, completely self-reliant, dedicated to his work, you know, just gets on with grinding his corn in his little windmill that plays Money by Pink Floyd, you know. Oh yeah, he knows a good rhythmic sound when he hears it, don't you, Windy? Yes, I do. And he's got very sensitive hearing, you know, very autistic ears. Yeah, he listens for the sound that says he has the wind he needs to make the sails go round. Yeah, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? Yeah, there's sensitive autistic ears. It says engine noises, of course, are horrid. That's why he's not going to get himself a truck. Just going to ride his little penny farthing. Because he's eccentric AF. No, doesn't really give a crap what anyone thinks. You know, wears his funny hat that, you know, obviously protects his head from being accidentally touched. Maybe it funnels sound a little, shades his eyes from the intense sunlight. And he's up on his hill, grinding his corn in his little windmill. Ancestral windmill, where he's lived all his life. He's never particularly wanted to travel. He's absolutely dedicated to his windmill. He just gets very attached to inanimate objects in general, you know. His windmill, his tricycle, hat, his trademark smock. He's clearly got some sort of sensory issues about tight clothing. He likes to sort of wave in the wind. His lovely billowing cotton skirts flowing out behind him as he walks. You know how it is. And I think a big clincher as well is, I don't know where I stand on copyright, actually putting this in my film, but it is freely available on YouTube, so I'll probably be alright, but I'll just direct you to it anyway. Because I am, if not a technological dinosaur, then at least a technological saber-toothed tiger. And I don't really know how to cut a scene into a film that I am making. It is the episode Mr. Dagenham the Salesman. 8 minutes in, it's only about 20 seconds, but I think it's a really, really good study of stimming and shutdown. It's an unusual episode because we see Windy in distress. You know, he's usually pretty chilled out, you know, he's just doing his thing in his little windmill, you know. His friends come to him asking for help with problems, which of course he solves because, you know, as a child, you know, us auties, we do get told, you know, stop living in your own little world, you're away with the fairies, you need to think about other people, we live in a society, etc. So of course he helps out his neighbours with any problem that comes along, and he is well prepared for every eventuality, being one of us, of course. He is clearly quite anxious about running out of supplies. Keeps his His storeroom's well stocked, as we do. Maybe he's a bit of a hoarder. You know, his yard is sort of full of old buckets and things. We don't like chucking things away, really, do we? I know I don't. Could be useful. Might need it for something, you know. It's such a nice old bucket. A bit rusty, but you know, we can use it for something. Can sit on it. It's beautiful. It's an old friend. Don't chuck the old bucket. Yeah. Never really goes further than Camberwick Green, the village at the bottom of the hill, but well, puddles off down there when he has a very defined purpose, such as buying 13 donuts. Must be same fooding, I suppose. Asking the chimney sweep to come and clean his chimney, though he did nearly forget when he saw the chimney sweep passing by, but then he did just have to turn back. And yeah, when we do have short-term memory issues, don't we? We do need reminding sometimes. Just take us a minute to fully realise what's going on around us occasionally, our sensory perceptions, etc. And he does have... He is a highly skilled individual, he's very clever, he's very good at making things. Yeah, he makes entire steamship from memory. Yeah, that's not something that just any old neurotypical can do, is it? You don't see aulistics doing that. I mean, you don't see many autistics doing it either, but, seems like the sort of thing one of us would do. Sometime, maybe. He doesn't cope with change, does he? Or Windy. Just likes to do things by himself. Make his own food. Pretty self-sufficient. Keeps his little cow and his chickens, he's happy up there in a little windmill with his animals around him. Occasionally getting bothered by people he knows, his neighbours. We need some flour urgently. Okay, get you some flour, that's my job. He likes fishing, he just likes to... It's probably the only time you see him particularly going out, doing something sociable with the guys, he sort of sits around the pond, having a little fish with them sometimes. It's relaxing, no pressure. He can do it, but he's not really that bothered, is he? Doesn't play social calls, doesn't do chit-chat, doesn't get engaged in local gossip. I think he tends to avoid Mrs. Honeyman pretty well most of the time. Of course, there's the episode where the policeman comes up to the windmill. As if anyone's been fishing without a licence in Windy Miller's pond. He says, "Well, do you think I'd tell on them even if they had?" Doesn't have any sort of respect for law or authority. He's chaotic good. He doesn't understand hierarchies. Tells that policeman where to get off. Politely, of course. He doesn't want any friction. Doesn't want any undue stress. He tells it how it is. He's my hero. You see, my hero. I love this guy. He's ace. I think this, in this little puppet, there's just such, such depth of character, and a film for preschool kids. It's amazing, So I'm going on about my special interest now. Windy Miller, my fave, my spirit guide. He's great, isn't he? Now I'll just add a little disclaimer before I sign off. I do not for a minute think any of these characters were intentionally autistic. They're all my interpretation. Yours may vary. If you have any to add, if you have any comments, any refutations even, just pop them in the comments. And I will see you in the next